Hello and welcome to another C# coding homework exercise. In this one, we will be creating a multiplication table with 25 rows of computations. We will allow the user to input the first and last base values for the multiplication table. In other words, the user will tell us how many numbers he wants to multiply with. Let's say 2 through 5. So we will be 2, 3, 4, and 5 multiplied by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down to 25, because we have a multiplication table with 25 rows of computation. And we are supposed to, the base value is supposed to range from 2 through 8. And if it's not, we are supposed to display an error message, and the whole multiplication table should be aesthetically formatted multiplication table. In other words, it should look nice. So let me just show you what it's gonna look like. So here I have the program running. It's asking for the beginning base value, so it's supposed to be from 2 to 8. So I'll do 2. And the ending value, again 2 through 8, let's say I'll do 9, which is out of range. So I'll get an invalid input message, like I say, that if it's not valid range, display an invalid message, or invalid input message, or some kind of error message. So let's try valid values. Let's say 3 is the beginning value and 6 is the ending value. And here is our multiplication table. Here's the 3, 4, 5, and 6, because I get beginning value is 3 and the ending value is 6. So 3, 4, 5, 6. And we have the n number, which is, according to the exercise, 1 through 25. Remember, 25 rows of computations. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 25. So when I take the first row, 1 multiplied by 3 is 3. Multiplied by 4 is 4. 1 times 5 is 5, and so forth. If I go to fifth row, 5 multiplied by 3 is 15. Times 4 is 20, 5 times 5 is 25, and so forth. And the last one, obviously, is 25, which is the last row. 25 times 3 is 75, times 4 is 100, and 5, 125, and 6 is 25 times 6 is 150. So this is our multiplication table. We have a heading. N means the number that we are multiplying with, which is 1 through 25. And 3, 4, 5, 6 is our heading for the columns, and we could have up to 8, from 2 to 8. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, so let's get started. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is declare 2 variables. The first one is going to be called beginning value. So in the previous example, the value was 3. We had 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we of course need the ending value. So end value, that in the previous example was 6. So user will enter beginning value and the end value. Now we need to get the user input, and since we have to make sure that the input is in valid range, which is 2 through 8, we have to display an error message and not allow user to enter an invalid input. And to do that, I'm going to use a do loop. So I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna loop while, and while the beginning value is less than 2, or the end value is greater than 8. In other words, if any of these is true, if beginning value is less than 2, then we have an invalid input, or if end value is greater than 8, then we have invalid input. The valid input is obviously 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Anything less or greater than that is invalid input. So that's what we're gonna use. So over here in our do body, we will do console.write, and we will ask the user, please enter beginning base value. And the user will enter the value, and I'm gonna store it in the beginning value. But since it's an integer and the input from the user is string, I have to convert it to integer. So I'll do convert that to integer 32. And what I'm converting is the user input. I'm gonna read the line that the user entered, convert it to integer, and assign it to beginning value variable. So over here in the bracket, it's gonna be console.read line. And whatever we'll read on that line, we'll try to convert it to an integer and assign it to beginning value. And we'll do the same for the end value. So console.write, and we will do please enter ending base value. And just like we did before, we will convert it to an integer. So end value equals convert that to integer 32. And again, we will do the console.read line as the string that we are converting to an integer. I forgot a semicolon here. So this is our do loop, but we need to display an error message if the user actually entered the wrong value. So over here, I'll do a simple if statement. If, and the statement is gonna be like the while loop basically. If the beginning value is less than 2 or the end value is less than 8, in other words, that's an incorrect input, we will do console.write line, and we will simply say invalid input. All right, so after all this input and the error message, if there is any, we want to move one line down simply because we were gonna be showing the table, so we don't want it all kind of mixed together. So console.write line, and we will just enter a blank line in between. All right, so now we should be displaying the headings, which is, if you remember the example, it would say n, and then 1, 2, or I mean the n, and then it was 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the numbers we multiply with. So, but before I do that, let me just do the actual multiplication table. So let's just do for integer I equals 0. Actually, no, it's not gonna equal 0 in this case. I'm gonna display the multiplication table because we'll start from 1 through 25. There is no 0, so we will do 1, because again, if you remember, there's 25 rows and the first starts with 1. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way down to 25, not a 0. This is not 0 base. This is simply displaying the numbers we are going to multiply with. So I is less or equal to 25 because it's not up to 25, it's including 25. And I plus plus. So this is our row. It's gonna be our 25 rows, if you remember from the example. So first I'm going to output the actual number that I'm using to multiply with. So again, it's basically gonna be the heading for the rows. It's gonna be the number 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way through 25. So I'll simply do console.write line, or just write, and I'll display I. So it will display, for the first iteration it will display 1, for the second it will display 2, all the way down to 25. So this is our starting our rows, and now we can do the actual multiplications. Let's just do the integer, I'll call it b, and it will equal to whatever the user entered as the beginning value. So this is our beginning value, because these are gonna be our columns, and our columns from the previous example started from 3 all the way to 6. So it was 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we don't go from 0 or 1 or anything. This is user entered beginning base value. B is less or equal to, because again it's up to and including to the end value that the user entered. In our case, in our example, it was 6. That was the end value. So if we do just less than 6, then it would be only up to 5. But again, this doesn't start from 0. This starts from whatever the user entered, and we entered 3 for the beginning value and ended it with number 6. So we have to include that. So B++. And in it, we will simply multiply, do the multiplication and output it. So we can simply do console.write, and we are going to multiply I, which is the number on the row, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 25, multiplied by whatever is in the B. So in this case, it starts with 3, so it would be 1 multiplied by 3. On the next one, it would be 1 multiplied by 4, then 5, then 6, in our previous example. Then we would move to the next row. I would become 2, so it would be 2 multiplied by 3, by 4, by 5, by 6, and so forth, all the way down to multiply 25 times 3, 25 times 4, 25 times 5, and 25 times 6. Again, that's from our previous example at the beginning. So once we output or display the row, we need to move to the next line. So we will do console.writeLine, so we can output the next line of the multiplications. Alright, so if I run it now, this is what we get. So I'll enter 2, which is a valid number, but I enter 9, which is an invalid number, and I get invalid inputs. Alright, so let's do 3 and 6 like we did before at the beginning. And we have it together. When you have 1, which was the 1, 2, 3, if you go the first row, the first column is 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 25. But all those numbers are stuck together, so you cannot really tell if it's 1 or if it's 13,456. So over here, we will have to include a space after the multiplication, so the numbers are separate. So again, let's try 3 and 6. And now we have it. Even though this looks like 13 and 26, it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 25. So we need to make a room there too. But let's say we go to 5, and 5 times 3 is 15, times 4 is 20, times 5 is 25, and times 6 is 30. So that is actually correct. The same with 25, times 3 is 75, then 100, 125, and 150. So the multiplications work. We just need to now display the heading and kind of space it out nicely. And to do that, let me just do the heading first. Actually, no. Let me do the formatting first. Instead of doing it just with console.write like this, what we can do is use the string.format, and we decide how much space between the numbers we actually want. So I can do over here where it does the multiplication, and instead of using this way, I can do a string output, because again the output is gonna be a string, but I will that has to be displayed. So it will equal to string.format, and in our formatting we have an option to define the spacing, how much characters for this line of output is going to be actually used. So I'll use 0, which is the placeholder for the actual result of the multiplication. That's gonna be the number itself, comma, and I'll use 6. So it's gonna be 6 spaces. So the number will basically be like number 1 would be like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. but the zeros won't be displayed. It just will be spaces and then 1. So our placeholder for the 0 over here, that's our placeholder, and 6 again defines the number of spaces for the number that for the string that we're going to output, and here I will place the multiplication actually. And over here, when it says console.write line, or just write, I mean, it will say the output. We will simply display the output like this. So let me just show you how it looks now. 2 and let's say 6 or something. So now it's all spaced out, and you can see that the numbers kind of line up almost. So we're on the right track. You can verify that the multiplication works. So let's do over here where it says I. This is the well, let me just show you. 3 and 6. The I in this line is this column. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way to 25. So I'm gonna format it the same way I did this. I'll simply going to use the string.format, but instead of defining another variable, I could, but the same like here, I didn't have to actually have another variable, but it's just for the readability of the code. But over here I can simply do inside of the console.write, I can do string.format and do the same I did before. I will do the placeholder and the number of spaces. And the placeholder will simply hold the I as it did before. So I think I missed one bracket, yeah. So when I run it now, again, let's try 3 and 6. And you can see the numbers are perfectly lined up. So now we can do the header over here where it would say n and then 3, 4, 5, 6, because this is the result of the multiplication. The header will simply show what numbers we are actually multiplying, because I mean we know that it's 3, 4, 5 and 6, but 1 times 3 equals 3, but this is the result, so we should have the header that kind of shows what these numbers actually are, just like we had in the example at the beginning of the video. So over here I will go and do the headers. So I will do a for loop for an integer I, and we will start. This is the header, obviously, so we will start from the beginning value. However, if we start from the beginning value, now let me just do that first, so you'll see that it's not gonna work exactly as intended, but again, I is equal or less than end value, because it's including the end value, and I plus plus. And over here we will simply have to decide normally we wouldn't have to, but the header shows the n, the letter n for the first column from 1 through 25. So I'm gonna determine if that's where I am within the loop, and I'm gonna output the letter n. So if I equals, if this is the first thing that we are printing, if this is the beginning value, then we will do console dot write, and we will do again the format. I'm just gonna copy paste this thing because that's actually is similar, so it's 6 spaces like that, and instead of I, what we are printing is the letter n. This is for the first column, again from 1 through 25. Else, in other words, if it's not the first one, we will simply output the header for the numbers that the user entered as the beginning and end value. So we will do console.write line, console.write, and I will copy paste this in it again, except this time we will actually output the number I that the user entered. So again, this is just for the headers, so I will do header, and this one, this for loop, the outer loop is rows, and the inner loop is our columns. So I'm gonna run it. It's not gonna be displayed exactly the way it's supposed to, so I'm gonna do 3 and 6, and you can see that it kind of you know, we have the n, but we have 4. We don't have 3. We have 4, 5, and 6. Okay, why don't we have 3? We have 3 here, right? But it's all messed up, and the reason is because we are starting from the beginning value here for the headers. What we need to do, we need to start with the beginning value minus 1, because we have to accommodate for the first column, which is just the 1 through 25 numbers. That's basically just another header, but for the rows. So over here, the same thing. We don't do the beginning value, we do the beginning value minus 1. So if I run it now and do 3 and 6, I have the n, I have the 3, 4, 5, and 6, but over here I have 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is supposed to be the second row. It didn't move it there. It's supposed to be 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we need to add a break line, because what you see in there, let me just run it again. 3 and 6. This is the header, 2, n, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is the result of the multiplication. 1 is supposed to be the one of the n's, 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then that's the number we multiply with. So 1 times 3 equals 3, 1 times 4 equals 4, and so forth. So this is the result. Even though it looks like the header, that's because it's multiplication by 1, so you get the same numbers, but it's actually the header mixed with the result. So over here, after we do the headers, all we have to do is console.write line, and we will output a new line. So that will separate the header from the second row, which is the multiplication results. So 3 and 6, and here are our results. Here's our header, n, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's the rows, 1 through 25, and here's the result of the multiplications. Multiplied by 3, these numbers multiplied by 4, these numbers multiplied by 5, and same numbers multiplied by 6. Alright, so this is the exercise. Fairly simple, I hope. If it was helpful, please leave a like, leave a comment, and share with your friends. And I will see you in the next video. Take care.